Excuse me. Fantastic. Thank you. I don't have slides today, so it's just me talking. I've put my notes in the notes document, but that is as far as I have in terms of a presentation. I wanted to talk today just because I find that for the last 5 years or so, I've constantly been in at least one conversation of which chat system shall we use, either transferring from one to another or in an organization that doesn't have one or setting up a new organization. And so I've just had this conversation a lot. And my current favorite answer to that question most of the time is Zulip. Um, big fan of Zulip currently. But every day I find myself using Slack, Mattermost, Matrix, Zulip, Signal and I'm sure that will be a familiar situation to many people in this space. Um, so just a little kind of little bit of wisdom to share from the previous experiences I've had. So postdoc number one, a few years ago, we didn't have a chat system. Like people were just messaging each other on WhatsApp or email. We decided to go for Slack just because some people had used that before and there wasn't the kind of institutional support for paying for something or the time to set up something self-hosted. Postdoc number two, we were using Discord. It wasn't my choice, but that was what it was before we started. That felt pretty weird to be like getting adverts for various first-person shooter games in the middle of meetings, but cool. It sort of worked. I'm part of the Turing Way, which is this big collaborative open source project. We've been using Slack for a long time. It's difficult to move away from that because it's a fairly distributed project. There isn't necessarily one person that can just be like, okay, we're moving, decision made, go. And so I think there, the inertia of probably most people would like to move, but we haven't really done anything about it. That's difficult to overcome. But we are constantly frustrated with messages falling into the black hole of 90 days ago in Slack. And so I think we definitely have lost a lot of institutional knowledge because of that. I'm part of a group that is starting a housing co-op at the moment, and this is actually the group that I'm most actively using Zulip with at the moment. We were just in a Signal group chat, but we found we were talking about like 10 different things at once, and so it's getting confusing. And I had heard about this thing called Zulip, and so I thought, aha, actually they have a free plan which is fairly generous. Let's give that a go. And that's been working really well so far. That's probably an unusual case study because there's only four of us. It is just a kind of a little group messaging system that we use. But it means that we can talk about 50 different things at once and kind of keep things in check. And unlike Slack, the free tier of Zulip is limited by file storage, but not maybe number of messages, but not date of messages. So for a small group like us, realistically, we're never going to hit that value unless something drastic changes. And there's the path to self-hosting if we want to do that at some point. We already do self-hosting for our website and a couple other things, so we could set that up. We'd need to work out how, but that's fine. We could do that. I'm also the community manager for the Digital Research Academy. I won't explain these organizations, but I've put the links in the chat. And we've been using Mattermost for a while. We self-host that. Seems to work very well. People seem fairly happy with it. There's a couple of gripes, but nothing, no major ones, I think. My personal dislike of Mattermost, my only dislike of Mattermost personally, is that the granularity of notification settings isn't that great. You can essentially turn notifications on or off for the whole organization. You can't say, I just want notifications for this channel, or at least if you can do that, I haven't found out how yet. And and a new organization that I'm helping to set up at the moment called Corvus Co-op. We were using Keybase, but that seems to be dying. I think it got bought out by somebody, and now they're not really updating it. One of my colleagues in that organization, Jez, wrote out this scrappy but very useful comparison of the different things that we were looking for and the different tools we were looking for. So there's Keybase, Zulip, Matrix, Slack, Mattermost, Discourse, IRC, and XMPP. There's some real nerdy ones on there. So I think if folks are interested in going down the kind of protocol route, things like Matrix are really exciting because they're open source and at the edge of my terminology here, but they're more like a protocol than a specific tool. And so there are different ways to access Matrix. You can choose which app you want to access it through, which is pretty cool. If you want to go even nerdier than Zulip, I'd recommend Matrix. It seems pretty neat. And that's what we're using at the moment, but it was a real kind of knife edge decision. Zulip also would have suited us pretty well. And maybe I see a question just in the document. What is E2EE? That is end-to-end encryption. So that is the idea that a message isn't accessible to the person who is running the server. It is only accessible to end users. Thanks, Cora. The punchline to this little bit of the presentation is that most of these systems have pretty much the same functionality these days. There's not major functionality difference between the systems. And actually, the things that I ended up making, or the groups that I was part of, ended up making decisions based on were things like pricing and how easy it was to get our institution to pay for things or host things, and what people knew already. Those are the things that it boiled down to. Zulip, I think, at the moment is unique in its free offering in terms of it's, I think, uniquely generous. It's I guess it's uniquely generous and with a relatively easy path to self-hosting later. So Slack, you can use it for a little bit, but then you could never transition to being self-hosted. It's either free or you pay Slack. Whereas with Zulip, there is that path to either paying Zulip to host it or to make it self-hosted later. The final thing is that I'll say is just a thing that I think is fairly sweet. The community support for Zulip seems really good, and I particularly like that they use Zulip for their community support. So if you find a bug or you need some help with something, their support system is an instance of Zulip, which I just think that's quite nice. They're walking the walk, you know? Whereas Mattermost has chosen to use a discourse forum for that, which, like, valid choice, but I think it's kind of sweet that they chose to use their own tool for their support system. Thank you.